Welcome, fellow ADE 500 students. This is Tom, and this is my mini lesson on Google Tools, subtitled Free Tools to Make Your Life Easier. So I thought what I would do is I would choose a really practical subject that I could talk about that, and in my opinion, benefits both the adult learner and the adult educator. And I have found that these tools that I'm going to kind of overview do just that. They are beneficial in many ways for educators and learners. And I am going to kind of walk through some of the highlights, some of the frustrations, and if you're not familiar with these tools that Google offers, I am going to give kind of an overview of what they are. Now the good news is that being students at Buffalo State, we actually all have pretty easy access to these tools, and I'm going to show you. If you didn't know that, I'm going to show you how we can access these tools. But otherwise, you can access these tools freely. Anyone can. You don't have to be a student at Buffalo State. Really, anyone in the world can sign up for a free account. But let's jump in and talk about kind of the main points that we're going to go through in this lesson. So again, I'm going to focus on what are Google tools. There's a lot out there, but specifically, what are the ones that I am going to focus on in this lesson? Next, what are the benefits and drawbacks of using a tool like this? So obviously, something's never all good or all bad, right? I feel like the tools that we're going to talk about have more positives than negatives, but I will not shy away from just talking about a few of those negatives with a tool like this. Also, how do you edit a shared Google slide? So we're going to actually get pretty specific and talk about some typical use cases of using some of these tools. One of them is called Google Slides, and the other one is called the Google Doc. And again, you may already be familiar with these tools, but if you're not, hopefully this will give you a good introduction. If you are familiar, this may be a good review. You may learn something different or new. Either way, these are kind of our main objectives for this mini lesson. So what are Google tools? The ones that I am focusing on are the ones that are pretty much parallel to the Microsoft Office suite. So if you are familiar, which I'm sure that you're familiar with Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, basically Google has created mirror programs for each of those. So the ones I have highlighted up on the screen, you can see we have Google Docs and Google Slides. Now Google Docs, that is basically Google's version of Microsoft Word, whereas Slides is Google's version of PowerPoint. And the difference here is, if you were looking at the screen, if someone was using Google Docs or Google Slides, you would probably mistake them for PowerPoint or Word. However, there are some differences. In function, they're very similar, but the difference is, number one, that they're free. We all know that the Microsoft Office suite is pretty expensive if you were just to buy it outright. However, the Google products are free, so that is a positive. They're also pretty flexible, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by that, but they are basically built around being collaborative and giving you opportunities to work with other folks on some documents. And that's pretty exciting, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And if you're anything like me, seeing that will start to kind of fire up some different ideas in your head of how you can use them, both as a student and as an adult educator. And now, what are the drawbacks? Well, I'll get into that in a second, but first of all, let me explain what I mean when I say that one of the differences between the Office tools, Microsoft Office, and the Google tools is that the Google tools live in the cloud, And I just want to go over that real quick, tell you a little bit about what that means. The cloud, that just, for this presentation's sake, that just basically means they're stored in the internet, kind of like email. So if we can all remember back in the day, when some of you may not be able to remember, but there was a time where email didn't exist, or at least it wasn't widely used. And you had to go to a physical location to either deliver a message or to receive a message. And that still exists, obviously, but with email, we know that we can basically send or receive a message anywhere that we have internet connectivity and from numerous devices, and we all love that. But what we know is that those messages no longer are in one physical location, which you kind of have some control over, right? But they actually live in what we call, the cloud, up in the internet. And we all know that there could be cases where, for some reason, those disappear, right? Because we don't really own those, right? We're using a free service. So if you have a Gmail account or a Yahoo account or Hotmail account, we all know that it's nice that they're free, but we all know that you're not ever 100% sure that for some reason or another they could disappear at some point. And I kind of feel that it's similar with the Google tools, right? If you have a Word document saved on your hard drive and it's on your flash drive as well, and maybe you saved it on somewhere else, you kind of have this backup and you can feel a little secure about that. And you have your Microsoft Word program installed on your computer that you paid for. And the Google tools, the one negative that I'll sometimes bring up is, even though I've never experienced an issue with losing any work or not having access, the negative is, you don't have any control, any ownership of it, because it is a free service. And the Google tools are basically just like that, like email. Those documents, your files, they live in the cloud. They live on the internet. So the other warning there, the other negative could be that if you don't have internet connection, you may not have access to your work. But again, we live in an age where there's probably very few times that you can think of right now within the past, let's say the past month, where you did not have internet connection. And we all know that that's not the case for folks all around the world. But for the folks that are currently in this class who are taking an online course, it's probably true that in the last month you almost always had a connection to the internet on some device, whether it was yours, a friend's, a public computer, or so on. So again, I do feel like the positives surely outweigh the negatives with Google tools. So again, the parallel to draw here with email is that you can access these files on any device that you can connect to the internet and log in. So that's great, right? How cool. But what does that mean for you? How are these tools actually useful? Well, here are some examples of some different, use cases or reasons why Google tools are useful. And I will give you some context in a second when we actually take a look at a couple. But here are just some ways that both educators and students use these. So one reason is that you can have access if you are collaborating on a single document with several users, you can collaborate and work on those documents at different times. You don't all have to be in the same room at the same time. So for example, if you are in a fully online class and you have to do a group project, you can work on a document asynchronously, which is always very handy with everyone's different schedules and time zones and such. Just skipping down a few, you can always revert to earlier versions of these documents. So if you are working on something and you kind of maybe you are working on it with several other people and you did not, you don't like where it's going, you can always kind of rewind back in time to an earlier version. they save automatically. So you do not need to worry about hitting that save button. Every time you make a change, your document saves, and you know that the next time you access that document, it is the most recent version. It's easy to take your existing files. So let's say you do have a lot of PowerPoints, Word documents, Excel files. You can actually store them in your Google Drive account, or you can even take those files and convert them into the Google Tools versions, which I do all the time. It's really handy. So for example, if you had a PowerPoint that you've used for a presentation and you want to share that with some other folks and have them help you edit it, you can drop that PowerPoint file into your Google Drive, convert it into a Google slide, and then send a link to those folks and they can edit that Google slide. And finally, one benefit as well is you do need an account if you're going to create a file, but you don't need an account if to see a file. So, or to even edit a file. You could send a file that you've created, whether it be a Google Doc, a Google Slide, a Google Sheet, which is the Excel version for Google. And you could send that to someone and they can view it, they can edit it without having a Google Drive account. So that's another bonus. Now, let's take a look at an example. And so this is actually going to tie into assessment number 1. So if you need to pause this video at some point to write this down, you can, or you can just kind of multitask, but note that this URL, this address, is case sensitive. So you do need to enter a capital B and a lowercase f, a capital X, capital S, and a lowercase b. It's case sensitive. But what I'm going to ask you to do, and the instructions will be there, is I would like for you to edit a shared Google slide. And again, this is Google's version of PowerPoint. So by giving you this address, I am sharing with you. This is one way to share. You just create a link that anyone who has the link can access the document. And then as the creator, you decide what kind of permissions the folks will have that click on that link. Can they view it? Can they edit it? Can they just comment on it? It's up to you. In this case, I decided that anyone who has this link can edit this Google slide. So by entering this URL, you will be brought to a Google slide, and I'm actually going to jump over to it right now. And so assessment number 1 is going to be to edit this Google slide. So you will see here that there are instructions which basically tell you to add a new slide to this Google slide presentation, type your name on that slide, and add anything else you want to the slide. And that's basically all I'm asking you to do. And then you, from that point, will see how easy it is to receive a shared Google slide from someone and then to edit it. And just, you probably noticed already just by looking at this, it looks a lot like PowerPoint. A lot of these features here are in PowerPoint, and there's probably very few features or tools that you're going to find are not here that are in PowerPoint. But if you're like a super PowerPoint user, there might be some things that are not available. But again, for most part, what you need is here. So to add a slide, just like in PowerPoint, over here, you're going to click on this little drop down. And you can choose whatever slide layout you want. So just go ahead and choose one. And so I'll just choose one and I'll delete this. Just put your name. And then again, underneath here, add whatever you want. And then that'll be all that I'm asking you to do. But I'm going to go ahead and delete this slide and just leave the instructions here. Okay, so that's assessment number 1. Now, if you have any questions, you can always send me an email, and I will put my email at the end of this lesson here, but that should be pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go jump back to our presentation slide. Okay, now, after you've completed assessment, assessment number 1, there is a second assessment that I would like you to complete. This one has a few more steps. Again, feel free to pause the video if you need to. Here are the steps. I'm going to kind of walk through them here, and then I'm going to jump over into my own Google Drive account through Buffalo State and show you how to do what I'm asking you to do. So I'm sure all of you have already logged into your Buffalo State email. And if you didn't realize, you probably did, but if you didn't realize, it is basically built on Google's Gmail software. So if you already have a Gmail account, I'm sure your Buffalo State email looks very familiar. If you don't have a Gmail account, a personal Gmail account, you basically do now. Your Buffalo State email is basically that. So all you're going to do is log into your Buffalo State email on your computer. This would probably be best to do on your computer. You could try to do it on your phone, but you probably would want to do it on your computer. And in the upper right-hand corner, if you haven't noticed, once you're logged into your email, there is an apps icon that looks like this little icon here with the 9 little squares there. So you're going to click on that, and you're going to see some different apps that you have available to you through your Buffalo State email account, and one of them is Drive, and the icon looks like this. You're going to go ahead and click on Drive. Okay, and once that loads up, in the upper left-hand corner, there's a big blue button that says New, and that's going to allow you're going to see that you can create a lot of different types of documents, but for this assessment, we are just going to go ahead and create a new, what's called a Google Doc, which is basically like their version of Microsoft Word. You're going to name it and then type anything you want. Again, the content is not important. All we're trying to do here is create the doc, and then we're going to share it. You're going to actually share it with me. So you're going to just name it whatever you want. And after you do that, and you just type something in there, you're going to click the blue share button, and that's in the upper right-hand corner. And then once that opens, it's going to give you some options on how to share. For this case, all you're going to do is you're going to share specifically with me, and you're going to go ahead and enter my email address into the box that pops up. It's kappa1tn001@mail.buffalostate.edu. And then you're going to click the blue done button, and that's it. You did it. I will then receive a notification in my email address, and my Buffalo State email address, that you shared a document with me, and that will then satisfy assessment number 2. So to give you a look at what that is, let me jump over here to my email. So here's my Buffalo State email, and this probably looks like yours. In the upper right hand corner, here is that apps icon that I was talking about. You're going to go ahead and click that, and you have a bunch of different options. Now, I am saying to just go over to your Google Drive, which houses all of the online documents that you create. So once you click that, it should open up a new tab for you. If you've never used your Buffalo State Google Drive, this will probably be empty, or you may have kind of a getting started document. You can see here that I do have a couple things in here already. So once you get in here, you're then going to click on the blue new button. You can see there's several options, but for this, and you feel free to play around with it. For this assessment, we're just going to click on Google Docs, and it's going to create a new Google Doc, which again should look very familiar. It should look pretty much like Microsoft Word, and we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to give it a fake name here. Oops, test. And then again, just type whatever you want. Then in the upper right-hand corner, you can see it's by default private only to you, the creator. But we're going to click on that blue share button. And there are lots of different options for sharing, but for this case, all you're going to do is go ahead and type in my email address, and then hit send. And that's all you have to do. I'm going to hit cancel so I don't share it with myself. I don't really need to do that. But you're going to hit the blue send button, and you're done. So hopefully that was pretty straightforward. If not, feel free to reach out with any questions. Again, here is my email address. capuantn01@mail.buffalostate.edu. I hope that you had a lot of ideas kind of percolate as you were looking at these tools. If you haven't used them before, again, these are very useful for collaborating with others. You can imagine you can kind of easily create a document or create a presentation and then email that link out to whoever you would like to, and then you can start working on that document either all at the same time or at different times whenever you have time in your schedule. There's a lot of interesting things that you can do with these tools. But again, if you have any questions about what I presented today or about the 2 assessments that I set up for you, please send me an email and I'd be happy to help you out. Okay, thanks.